Baltimore Ravens are 1-5 and have been one of the laughing stocks of the league, unfortunately, so far this season. And that didn't change on Thursday as the Bears appeared to poke some fun at the Ravens. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We're 5 days a week plus more here on Locked On Ravens, giving you that daily Ravens coverage and content. We have a jam-packed episode today. Todd Monken hinted at some offensive personnel game plan things for Week 8 against the Bears and didn't really say a lot of what Ravens fans wanted to hear. We'll talk about what he had to say and what that could mean for Sunday. Then in the second part of the show, Lamar Jackson is one of the biggest stories in Baltimore right now. He practiced again on Thursday, but what are people saying about his availability for Sunday? We'll talk about that. Then finally, the Ravens made some roster moves. They added a veteran pass rusher, moved off of a player, and could be doing some practice squad maneuvering. So we'll talk about all that as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Here with me today, it is from the Ravens Talk podcast and the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, Sam Njoku. And Sam, man, everybody has their eyes peeled for Lamar Jackson. You know, they're waiting for him to come on the field. On Wednesday, he was out there, 25 minutes late. Everyone's like, where is he? Where is he? Well, Thursday, we'll get to it in the second part of the show a little bit. Much quicker to appear at practice, which, of course, I think everybody's in a good mood about.
Oh, yeah. I never looked at a pre-practice video as thoroughly as I did this week with Lamar Jackson. That tells you how significant his presence is for this offense, as this team is 1-5 and they're looking for a spark. And I don't think there's a bigger spark in the National Football League than Lamar Jackson.
Not at all. Again, not necessarily set in stone that he will or won't play on Sunday. The Ravens keeping that tight to the vest, and we'll have to see how that unfolds. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the second part of the show. But it's interesting now because you have a Bears team in Week 8 that's on a big winning streak. The Ravens are on a big losing streak, and it looks like the Bears have trolled the Ravens with a video that they have posted of a basketball hoop and a ping pong table and video games. They're playing as Tremaine Edmonds, who is in this video. And, you know, I think TJ Edwards is the other guy. And we obviously know the controversy. We know the controversy that has happened where the Baltimore Sun put out the article, the players told the Baltimore Sun, the coaches removed all this recreational stuff or, you know, toys or distractions or games or whatever. And then it came out that it was actually the players, the veteran players that did it. Now the Bears are trolling the Ravens, it appears here. So again, it's just like, this is where we are with this Ravens team right now. Is like, they're not feared right now. They're not a team that's feared. Teams think they can make fun of them. Just absolutely unreal that, you know, for a team that we thought, you know, best roster in football, prime Super Bowl contender, this team is sitting at 1-5 and is the absolute laughingstock of the league still.
It is. It's very funny. I saw that video. You know, hey, that's what happens when you're 1-5. People just think they can walk all over you. This is a man's man league. They will bully you if you give them even a hint of blood. The Ravens used to be the bullies. They weren't out there trolling anybody. But, you know, when they came into an opposing guy's territory, they were barking. And now it's the other teams that are barking, trying to, you know, beat a team that buries the Ravens. So it's going to be up to the Ravens to take this message to wherever they want to take it. Take this, you know, this problem that they have in front of them and make the best of a bad situation because, yeah, that Bears video was kind of crazy. And considering where we thought this team would be, I thought they'd be 5-1 minimum entering this game. They're 1-5. We will see what happens in this contest. But, yeah, the Bears definitely got some bulletin board material. I am sure the Ravens have taken notice of it. And this may be the spark that the Ravens need. You know, crazy to say, I know, you know, bulletin board material is not really real according to some people, but hey, anything will help. I will take any and all assistance, Chicago, to get this team going and get this team rallied for a huge game here in Baltimore.
Yeah. You know, bulletin board material helps. motivation factors, right? I think it will. I can't believe it. I cannot believe that this actually happened. And watching the video, like it again, there's no context. I mean, the caption of the actual video says the competition don't stop except for a quick snack break, and it's a Snickers, ad. It looks like, or Snickers is at the bottom here. But again, very interesting timing that certainly adds up to this being a little jab at the Ravens. So I mean, hopefully they can use that as bulletin board material. And everyone's been wondering, particularly on the offensive line, what is this personnel going to look like coming out of the bye week? Now, on the Locked On Ravens squad show, you, Q, and I, we all talked about kind of what it could look like offensive line-wise. Are they going to make a change? Well, it certainly seems like not a lot of change is coming, as Cordell Woodland asked Todd Monken if he anticipated personnel changes, and Todd Monken said, quote, "I don't anticipate too many personnel changes in terms of us." And then he said, being excited to get Patrick Ricard back and excited to get Ronnie Stanley healthy. So he said they're excited about that. But I think, again, a lot of the Ravens fan base wanted to hear Daniel Falele is getting benched and we're putting Corey Bullock out there. And of course, they're not going to say that outright during the week here. I think you have to kind of look to pregame warmups on Sunday to actually know if Falele is going to start or not. But again, feels like the Ravens want to try this out for one more week. At least it appears that way. If that is the case, Sam, I think a lot of people would be disappointed.
I don't think I could take it, Kevin. I don't think I could take another game of freaking Andrew Voorhees and freaking Daniel Falele on the field again. I can't do it. I can't watch this team do that to Lamar Jackson, especially if Lamar Jackson plays. I can't watch Daniel Falele fall on his butt again. It'll be disheartening to say the least. I think there's a greater word for it, but I can't say it here on this type of programming. But it would be insane if these guys did that, especially given the 2-week period you have to get whoever you wanted to put in acclimated to the system. Even more so, it just doesn't seem right to do that to Lamar Jackson. Now, grand scheme of things, is Corey Bullock a better player than Daniel Falele? Not according to what we've seen the first 6 weeks. You'd think that if he was better, he'd be out there. Same thing goes with Ben Cleveland, who we talked about ad nauseum for over 1.5 seasons. We talk about Emory Jones, who's on the active roster, still hasn't been cleared by doctors, according to John Harbaugh. So lots and lots of uncertainty with that position. But, man, I don't know if I can handle another game of these two guards playing. We got to get rid of at least one is my thought process. But, hey, maybe both of these guys perform well. We saw Andrew Voorhees struggle early on this season. He picked it up against the Rams. You saw Daniel Falele play pretty decent to consistent of the last few games. And then, Rams game looked terrible. Even the Texans game, he didn't look all that great. In fact, he hasn't looked great all season, let's be honest. But the fact of the matter is, those two together is just not a match made in heaven. And it doesn't affect anyone more than Tyler Linderbaum, who seems to have a down year this year. And a lot of it, we're assuming, is because of the talent around him. The center has to deal with both guards. Sometimes you got a stunt coming one way and you got to, try and figure out what you're going to do. Block this guy in front of you or block the guy running down the seam at Lamar Jackson is just an insane type of pressure to put on that center, as well as the pressure, figuratively and literally, you're placing on Lamar Jackson because those guards are not getting it done.
They're not. And there was a graphic that was put out on Thursday, and it's essentially time to pressure and pressure rate for offensive guards. And it's a graph, and you have all the guards on it here. Andrew Voorhees, in terms of pressure rate, is not, and he's kind of in the middle in terms of pressure rate, right above 4%. The worst is Trevor Penning over with the Saints, who's up above 7%. But Voorhees is still in the bottom half to middle of that. And average time to pressure, he is in the bottom 4th of the league, it looks like here. Daniel Falele is the worst average time to pressure guard in the NFL right now. The worst. It's about 2.1 seconds average time to pressure. The average is about 2.7. Pressure rate, he's been okay at. He's right up about 2.6. You know who's been good in both categories, Sam? John Simpson, Raven legend. John Simpson over with the Jets. Could use him right about now. You could use a guy like Kevin Zeitler. I mean, I'm looking at this right now, and Kevin Zeitler also is in the top quadrant, both in average time to pressure and pressure rate in terms of good performance. So you'd love if those two guys were in Baltimore right now, but they're rolling with what they have. And we know that Bull Smolka, I've referred his tweet multiple times about PFF grades for the Ravens through 6 weeks, where Andrew Voorhees is 40th among guards, and Daniel Falele is 45th among guards. And I think that's what Tyler Linderbaum, and he's working around those guys. He's 4th among centers right now, which I think gives a lot of credit to him. Even though I mean, he's had some moments of struggle, but again, I don't think it's all about Linderbaum in those moments. We've seen some plays where he's gotten pushed back and blown off the ball, but he also kind of got, I mean, imagine if he was playing next to Zeitler or a guy like Marshall Yanda, like, someone who's a veteran and has that experience. So again, it feels like the Ravens aren't going to make that change. We won't officially know until Sunday, but Todd Monken, at least in my opinion, hinting there. But you and I talked about this, Sam. The return of Patrick Ricard, I feel like might have something to do with this, where they want to see their offense with a healthy Patrick Ricard, with that offensive line, and ideally, obviously, with a healthy Lamar Jackson. And I think the big thing that Ricard brings, and Todd Monken talked about this as well, just the experience that Monken has and he brings to the table. He said he can play at the line of scrimmage, he can play in the backfield. He's a guy that doesn't get dented. He doesn't overreact to what he sees. And, there's a lot to be said about him. He's an elite football player, Todd Monken said. So Ricard back is certainly going to help. But I also don't want to put the pressure or expectations on Patrick Ricard, Sam, that he has to save this offensive line by himself. It's essentially saying Lamar has to save the team by himself, just a little bit on the lower scale of things. I mean, how big of an impact do you think Patrick Ricard will have? And do you think that the benefit for the offensive line is going to be like it's night and day, or do you think it's going to have to look more on internal improvement within the unit?
Well, again, Pat Ricard's coming into this, season now, finally, is huge. I mean, we can't overstate it enough. He's just been a huge part of this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, especially in the running game, especially when it comes to chipping for the right and left tackle, especially for being there on passing down, just being a blocker in general. He is huge. He's a 6th offensive lineman there that you can use that can also catch passes as an outlet. It's a huge addition, but we've seen this team before. We've seen this offensive line group in the postseason against the Bills. They were outmanned, at least in the first half. It felt like they were just beat up. And some of that is the guard play. Why not see if you can get even better play out of the offensive line with a better guard and Pat Ricard in there? So I don't really buy the notion that, having Pat Ricard in there solves the problems with Voorhees and Falele. I still think they need to get a guard in there, but they are going to be a lot better with Pat Ricard than without. Maybe the Ravens, as you mentioned, are going to go ahead and see what this offensive line looks like with Pat Ricard. Maybe that's why they're not as urgent to get a Kevin Zeitler or John Simpson from the Jets. And we've seen reports saying that the Ravens are focused on the defensive side of the ball. They're comfortable with their offensive line. They feel as though whatever they need to get is in-house based on what we've heard from reports. So, I'm not going to be holding my breath for a trade to go down on the offensive side of the ball. But Pat Ricard certainly changes a lot of things. No one's going to be happier than Derrick Henry. I don't think there's going to be a happier soul to see Pat Ricard on the football field than that guy wearing number 22. You should see a boom in his performance for sure in this contest against the Bears defense that, is not very good at stopping the run in general. So Pat Ricard, great addition. Want to see more at this offensive line. I'm not sure Pat Ricard is going to solve all the problems, but he will certainly be a bonus.
Man, I'm telling you, this offensive line misses Pat McCary in a huge way, if not for his starting ability, but just for the ability to have a starting caliber offensive. He's essentially 5 roster spots with one guy, and you're missing that depth. You have inexperience, so that's kind of the nature of the beast. And they didn't go out there and get anybody else. Remember, Jones has been hurt, which has been unfortunate, but we'll see. They need a better performance on Sunday against the Bears. Hopefully they can get that going. Coming up, though, a lot of that performance will probably be based on whether Lamar Jackson is out there or not for this offense and what the ceiling and the floor is. And we have more practice updates, what people are hearing about Lamar, and other Ravens injury news. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. Makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And the Ravens, they need a win against the Bears in week 8. They're 1-5. They have to get something on the board here. And for the Ravens over on FanDuel, they're 6.5-point home favorites against the Bears. So whether you like the Bears as the road underdog or the Ravens as the home favorite, you have to get over to FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And the show is brought to you by Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS. That's sad. Software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform of global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. By uniting your employees, teams, and departments in one system, Rippling removes the bottlenecks, busy work, and silos your software created. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically and perfectly in sync, and it's seriously simple to use and gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. And right now, you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. Learn more at rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNFL for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still here with you talking Ravens football. We're 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday, but we have bonus episodes on the weekends when there are headlines. We have watch-alongs where we react to every single play during every single game. We got the instant reaction shows after games and after pieces of Ravens big news. And of course, we got the Locked On Ravens squad show twice per week on Wednesdays at 7:30, as well as after games. Sam and I are on that, as well as former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. And if you don't tune in for anything but just to hear Q's rants, it's well worth it. Let me tell you that. Q, we love Q. We love everything about the Ravens squad show. So you got to tap in and tune in for all we got coming your way on Locked On Ravens. But Sam, as we talked about earlier, Lamar Jackson back at practice for the second straight day. There was no lateness controversy this time around. Lamar Jackson out there. And I think it's so funny you mentioned the videos of like analyzing you're slowing that thing down. Like, okay, is there a limp here? Is there a little, does he have a little bit of is the speed not all there right now? Is he taking it easy? Looked good to me. I mean, again, I'm not a doctor. I can't speak for, any medical stuff, but just from the eye test, it looked good. He was, again, listed as a limited participant. Not anything anybody really said about the situation in terms of will he be out there or not. But hey, 2 days of practice, a really good sign. And obviously, hopefully he can put together a full session today on Friday. But even if it's another limited session and he's questionable, 3 days of practice is a good sign. But what's your feeling on the situation right now, Sam?
I feel better about it today than I did yesterday. I think him coming in late was kind of nerve-wracking. It showed me maybe there's a little bit of coyness going on with the Ravens coaching staff. But him coming in on time today, what I've heard from various reporters regarding how he looked in the limited amount of time that got to actually see the guy, leads me to believe that there's more likely than not going to be number 8 on the field on Sunday, which is going to be a huge boost for this team. Barring any setbacks, we know those hamstring injuries can be tricky. It just takes one wrong step, one wrong move, and it's back to being an issue. That's why it was very important for him to get that rest. That bye came at the greatest of times for Lamar Jackson. Not only for Lamar, but for Roquan Smith, who also dealt with the hamstring injury, even though he is fully participating in practice. So I'm pretty excited about the notion that Lamar comes back. Asked various reporters, asked various people that were there about how he looked. I think it was about a 95% in the positive direction, where everybody was like, oh yeah, he looked like his normal self. I didn't see anything. I mean, maybe one or two guys who I talked to who said, oh, well, he looked like he may have been a little gimpy still. But I think the overall message was he looks to be under control. He's not pushing it too much. He's not performing in everything as far as practice is concerned, which is why he got that limited status. But if I were a betting man, I would say we see number 8 out there on Sunday.
I would hope so. I would hope so. And you're not alone in terms of, feeling better about it on Thursday than you did on Wednesday. Adam Schefter reported on Thursday morning. He said, Cody came out to practice 23 minutes late on Wednesday. I think the team was encouraged he was back then. Schefter said he reached out to a couple of people, and the answer that he got back was, we got to see how he does on Thursday. He said they might be playing it coy, not wanting to say anything. And Schefter said his sense was the fact that he's back at practice, if he's practicing when they're in the spot they're in, he's going to be playing. So, I don't think they would want to rush him back. Obviously, I don't think that's worth it, even with the spot that they are in. But, you have to be sure Lamar, again, 100% healthy for anybody, any NFL player at this point in the season. It doesn't happen. But to get him as close to that as you can, because you don't want to put him out there and something happens and all of a sudden you lose him for the season or possibly worse. So I think for the Ravens, I know that they'd love to play those games about we're not going to tell you anything. We're going to keep everything tight to the vest. And, John Harbaugh literally said on Wednesday, there's no benefit to giving information on who would fill in for Lamar if he wasn't able to play. But I feel pretty confident that if Lamar plays, they will win this game. I know we talked about that yesterday on the squad show, but, it feels like with the spot they're in, backed up against the corner, that they're pretty healthy right now, all things considered. I mean, things are lining up, but there is a difference between things lining up on paper and obviously executing it on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the offensive line. That's my number one concern heading into this matchup. Lamar Jackson got hurt for a reason. It wasn't because he was scrambling, for 15 yards down the field. It's because he was sitting in the pocket. And once again, the pressure got to him because the offensive line hasn't done a great job of protecting the guy. And if you got those 5 guys out there, based on what we've seen, even in his absence, I'm just very concerned that we're not looking at another situation where you're endangering the health of your quarterback. So I really hope that the Ravens do err on the side of caution, get somebody in there that you can block at least more consistently. Maybe it doesn't have the ceiling that a Falele has, but can just be consistently okay, average. I'll take average. I'll take slightly below average at this point, but get somebody out there that can at least do what he's told without the limitations of his size or athleticism slowing him down. So I think that's the big thing for Lamar Jackson, getting out there, being comfortable in the pocket. This run defense, as I mentioned with the Bears, is not very good. They can really take advantage of this run defense with Derrick Henry having the boom of having Lamar Jackson in there. It's a thought of his run there. If the hamstring injury is a concern still, that's another thing that I'm sure the defensive coordinator over there in Chicago would think about. But overall, having Lamar Jackson there is a huge boost for a team we saw put points on the board at will, even though they were losing games because of the defense. The offense was humming on all cylinders almost every single week.
Yep, there has to be something that gives there, probably just from a personnel perspective. But if they're not going to do that, it has to give from a performance perspective because, talking about whether it be the offensive line or even defensively, with some of these positions and some of these guys, it's like, what do you have to lose in trying somebody else out? Like, going back to the offensive line conversation, you're 100% right that like Corey Bullock could not work out. Like, putting him in there for Falele, it just couldn't. There's a possibility that it doesn't work for you. But at this point, what do you have to lose? Like, what do you have to lose in trying something else? Because weren't we here last year with the defense? I mean, the defense was awful every single week. And then essentially they said, we have to find this last gasp effort. And they moved Kyle Hamilton around. They put Darius Washington. And I talked about this on the show on Wednesday. And I was just like, look, it could go great and you find something, or it could go terribly. But either way, at least you're finding out what works and what doesn't. And if it doesn't work, your season's probably over. But it could be over anyway. Like, it's just at this point, I don't know what you have to lose. But the good thing for this Bears game from the Ravens perspective is they do have the rest advantage and the health advantage. A lot of the Ravens injury report right now from Thursday is full. A lot of guys are full. Chidobe Awuzie, full practice. Zay Flowers, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, Patrick Ricard, Roquan Smith, Ronnie Stanley, and Tez Walker. All those guys were full. Now, DeAndre Hopkins was a new addition to the injury report with an illness, so hopefully he's all right. And Lamar Jackson, the only limited participant, obviously him back-to-back days being limited. But on the Bears side of things, there were actually some new guys added to the report and some guys who didn't practice for the second straight day. Cole Kmet, their tight end, did not practice for the second straight day. Tyreek Stevenson, their corner, did not practice. And then there were some other guys that were added to the report on Thursday. Tremaine Edmonds with an ankle injury, he was added. Kyler Gordon hit the cornerback. He had a groin and calf injury. He was added. DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift were upgraded from did not practice to limited. But, you have a decently banged up Bears team that even if some of these guys are able to play, they might not be 100%. And, with performance, that can impact how a guy goes out there and plays the game. So I think that aspect of it, Sam, is really, really big because bye weeks are always great for the rest and reset aspect, both physically and mentally. But the other perk of that is if you do have a couple of injuries that are lining up to maybe come back right before the bye week or right during the bye week, you can make sure guys are as healthy as possible. And so it seems like for the second straight year, the bye week lined up at a pretty perfect time.
It did. And say what you want about John Harbaugh, but he performs pretty well after a bye week. So I think that the Ravens team could get some things going. We'll see what happens. I am concerned about the running game of the Bears. I think the Lions ran a very similar offense to what Ben Johnson did. Obviously, Ben Johnson coming from Detroit and going to Chicago. The Detroit Lions really stayed with the implementation that Ben Johnson had. That running game for the Chicago Bears could be a problem. DeAndre Swift I think he'll play even though he was limited with that groin injury. The Ravens will need to do a good job stopping the run. I know Roquan Smith's back, but still no matter BK. They look pretty decent against the Rams, even though the Rams did have their way with them in the red zone when it comes to the run. They need to find a way to stop the run, make this a one-dimensional offense, put the ball in the hands of Caleb Williams. Try your best to get pressure. Hopefully the bye week, as Zachary Ross said, they used it effectively and learned how to get some pressure. Maybe it's by blitzing more. Maybe it's by, predicting or following a blitz or what have you. Whatever it takes to get that boy on the ground, they got to do it because, again, this run game can be pretty electric. And if you give Caleb Williams a run game effectively, that play action could really be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, right now you need to be able to not only get Caleb Williams on the ground, I 100% agree with you there, but yeah, forcing turnovers, that to me is the key in this game. The Bears defense, part of the reason the Bears have been so successful over the course of this 4-game winning streak is because the Bears defense has 16 turnovers in 6 games. Oh, yeah. The Ravens have 3. And now Malaki is this team's leading sack guy with 2, and he has not played since week 2. So that's a bit of a problem. I mean, Tavius Robinson also has 2, so I guess the injured reserve guys are the ones that have all the sack success, and now no one else is really coming to the table there. So you need to get other contributions from other players in the pass rush department. It's going to be really, really key that they do that because you're right. Speed up that internal clock, force Caleb Williams out of the pocket, make him make mistakes. Don't let him sit back there and dice you apart because with any quarterback, I don't care who you are, what weapons you have, if the Ravens aren't getting pressure like they are and they have been, going to be a long day. How do I know that? How do you know that? How do we all know that? Well, we've seen it for 6 weeks. So it hasn't been great. But the Ravens did finally make a move for a pass rusher. We'll talk about who they added as well as who they let go and what it could mean for the roster moving forward, including for week 8. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming your way on Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is for the Ravens in week 6, as they didn't play in week 7 because of their bye week. John Jenkins had a huge turnover on Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Yes, the Ravens lost the game, but the Ravens have been struggling to generate turnovers all season. And that's some of the things that the Ravens need. They need to get in the turnover department on defense, get the ball back to their offense. And John Jenkins doing that as kind of an unsung hero has been really cool to see, especially his emergence for the Ravens this year. So I think that's a positive way you can look at the defense and hoping that they can get back on track and hopefully move forward there this season. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku. We're rocking out with you here on this Purple Friday edition of the show. Hopefully this Purple Friday leads to a win. It's funny, Sam, the Ravens, they've been on this 3-game. This will be the last game of a 3-game homestand, and it doesn't even feel like it. I mean, the vibes have just been so low. It's like, oh, hey, they've been at home. It's been great. And, they've just been losing games. So hopefully they're going to be able to get back on track here and, figure things out. Again, you got week 5 against the Texans, week 6 against the Rams, and now obviously here week 8 against the Bears. But the Ravens, we were wondering, are the Ravens going to make a move for a pass rusher? They only have 3 on the active roster right now. And on Thursday, they finally did something. They added Carl Lawson to their practice squad, someone they had in for a workout earlier in the week. Bengals draft pick in the 4th round, someone who had some early success there. He was drafted back in 2017, had 8.5 sacks in his first season. He ended up playing for Dallas in 2024 after a disappointing stint with the Jets. Injury. He was injury bitten there. Played for Dallas in 2024. He had 5 sacks last year. He's someone that can win one-on-one really effectively. He doesn't need stunts or anything like that to go out there and get the job done. And I think the Ravens just need somebody like that, Sam, to say, hey, we're going to leave you on an island over here. Go out there, beat that guy, get to the quarterback. Cross-chop move for him is a strong one. And, I don't necessarily think he is going to play this week. It's a pretty short turnaround from being signed Thursday afternoon to playing on Sunday afternoon. Could definitely happen. He could get elevated and play. The Ravens also released Jaire Mitchell-Penn from the active roster. So right now they only have 52 guys there. There's been speculation maybe they could promote Tyler Huntley there. He's used 2 of 3 practice squad elevations, but with Patrick Ricard coming back, having Jaire wasn't really necessary anymore. So how do you like the Lawson move? And do you think that this will have any big time effects for the pass rush down the stretch, or is it more so a depth piece for you?
It's a move. It's something. It is something. They had to do something. We talked about it. Can't go into that game with three, edge rushers to go after Caleb Williams. I think, that maybe Carl Lawson does play. Maybe they just, give him a few plays, give him a slight playbook. Hey, when your number's called, just go after the quarterback, and that's all you got to do. So there's a chance, maybe. But this isn't a move that has me overly excited. He does. He did pretty good in Dallas last year, actually. He got pressure pretty consistently. So that's something that the Ravens can hang their head on. Also, he's a power rusher, something that the Ravens do like, in this defense for whatever reason. So I think that this is going to be a decent move. This isn't the end-all be-all move. The Ravens still, if they win these next two games, have got to get an effective edge rusher. They gotta get a defensive lineman. They have to do that. So those are what they're looking at right now. It's very difficult. Takes two to tango. I know a lot of Ravens fans are not very happy with the moves right now, lack thereof, for the Ravens as far as trades go. But, these guys are holding tight to their draft picks. The GMs are, and not to their draft picks, but to their players, and it's going to take a couple more losses under their belts to make that move. So the Ravens do have time. If they win this game against the Bears, win on Thursday against the Dolphins, they have an extended amount of time between the Dolphins game and the trade deadline to really work the phones and try and get a move done. But for now, this will do. This will have to do. The Ravens have no choice. They're going to go into this game and do what they have to do. Maybe Trent Simpson gets some work at the edge, though. We'll see what happens with that. I don't know. But, having Roquan Smith there does, kind of take some snaps away from that inside linebacker spot for Simpson. I think they're going to stick with Buchanan opposite Roquan Smith if I was a betting man. So maybe they get some more action on that regard. So I don't know. I think the Carl Lawson, signing is a move. I'm glad they did something. But the moves don't stop there. They got to get to work.
Yeah, and it's just unfortunate because really for the Ravens, David Ojabo really hasn't done a lot for you. I mean, at this point, can you even count him as somebody that can give you snaps there? I mean, he hasn't really shown anything. So that at that point, you're essentially down another guy, at least another consistent option. Obviously, Mike Green hasn't been the player that we thought maybe he could have, or the impact that we thought he could have early on during his rookie season, which again, I think this is what comes with being a Super Bowl contender or having the expectations of one, at least, is that rookies don't really have time to make mistakes. And that's the same conversation with Malaki, some of the same conversations with some of these other players. It's like rookies make mistakes. Some rookies need more time. Like it just is what it is. But when you're on a team that has the expectations the Ravens do, those mistakes are costing you games. They're costing you potential seeding, big moments in games. So, pass rusher wise, I think everybody expected kind of Mike Green to be able to take on some level of a role, but now you're thrusting everybody in there. Teddy Buchanan's having to play big snaps. Peoples is having to play big snaps. Obviously Malaki was having that role initially, but even you're playing Keon Martin when Marlon's not out there, and everybody's getting all these big roles that weren't expected. So just getting veterans, and that's why, I liked the CJ Gardner-Johnson signing when it happened, because it's look, at least he's been there, done that. He's a Super Bowl champion. He has experience. That's what you need. You just need experience. So look, is the Carl Lawson signing going to be the be-all, end-all? The Ravens are winning the Super Bowl? No, I do not think it's that move. But yes, it can be a move in the grand scheme of things, but not the move. You mentioned the deadline, and I think it's such an interesting conversation because, you look at this team right now, they have a top 10 draft pick. I mean, their draft pick right now is number 6. So it's good at least that the deadline comes after this week. And honestly, it's going to come after their week 9 game 2 against Miami on Thursday night. You're going to have a pretty good sense if you're the Ravens after the next 2 weeks where your season is headed. You and I have talked about that before. But really interesting between the Ravens and the Bears, this matchup. I think it'll be a good game, honestly, and we'll just have to see how it all unfolds. But Sam, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping on. Before get you out of here, please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Ravens Talk Podcast. Have a show once a week. We'll have a show after this Ravens-Bears game, talking all things football. You can also catch me on the Locked On Ravens Squad show of myself, KO, and Q talking Ravens football. Hopefully we'll be boasting about how this defense has come to life, how this offense is back with Lamar Jackson, and we got another win under our belt here in the 2025 season.
Yep, and hopefully the Bears trolling backfires. We'll be able to have a nice little troll from the Ravens. Hopefully that'll be the case that we get, because I'm still just in shock that happened. So Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in here. Sam, thank you as well. Links to all Sam's work in the description down below. Be sure to check him out and go support him. Thank you again for tuning in to Locked On Ravens today. Might have some bonus episodes over the weekend. Seems to be a thing we do here during the season a lot because there are so many headlines to talk about. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.